Hi folks, it's time for another wrap up. These are the books that I read between the end of October and the 20th of November, which is the date that I am filming this. Obviously it's going to be a bit later when it's up and in the world, but that's okay. Batch filming at the moment because very busy. So the first one that I read was a disappointment. It was Deathless by Catherine M. Valente, and I've read some of Catherine M. Valente stuff before. I've read the first in the Fairyland series and Palimpsest, both of which I really loved for different reasons. But yeah, so I had high hopes for this one. It is a Russian folktale retelling, basically, and it's got many elements of Russian folktales. And at the moment I'm struggling to think of any Russian folktale retellings that I have really loved, because there have been a few that I really didn't like. Uprooted was one I read a few years ago and really didn't like, and then last month or the month before I read The Bear and the Nightingale, which again I had really high hopes for. I thought that I was going to really love it, and I absolutely didn't. I could not understand what all the fuss was about that book, and same goes for Deathless. So this is about a young girl who ends up marrying this figure from folklore who is known as the Deathless, and he is cruel and manipulative and just kind of a nasty piece of work. I didn't see what she saw in him, and I thought that it was a really damaging relationship, overly romanticized, and if you've watched any of my other reviews on books like this, that is my least favourite trope. But also I just couldn't get on board with the writing style in this, and it was the same with The Bear and the Nightingale. I've really liked Catherine M. Valente's writing before, so I'm not sure what I didn't like about this. It's got that folklore fairy tale style to it, so it's a tale, it's telling you a story, so it's not maybe as descriptive, but the bits that were descriptive bugged me. I'm almost tempted to read this again just so that I can get to the bottom of what I didn't like about it, which sounds a little bit mad. It annoys me when I don't like something and I don't understand precisely why. I can't recommend this one, sorry. Then I read two books by Shirley Jackson, one being We Have Always Lived in the Castle and the other being The Haunting of Hill House. Now everyone seems to be reading Shirley Jackson at the moment. It's that time of year, or at least it was in October or beginning of November when I read this. I was disappointed to see that the Netflix show doesn't follow the same storyline as the book does, because I was kind of wanting to watch that. And I was thinking as I was listening to the audiobook of this that it would make a really interesting film. So what I liked about this is that it starts off fairly being a fairly straightforward story, and it doesn't seem that anything especially out of the ordinary is happening, but we hear stories about it, and then things out of the ordinary do start happening, and it gets progressively scarier over the last bit of the book. I didn't find it as scary as I thought I would, and I think what I like about ghost stories is that I'm a huge skeptic. I don't believe in ghosts or anything of the supernatural, but I like reading about it because I like having to think about how it might be something psychological, or there might be some scientific explanation for it, and there's a bit of that in the book, so that's quite fun. And I think what is great about this book is the psychological side of it. So it's about a group of people who go to this house called Hill House, and it's known to be haunted, and they go there to find out about the hauntings and do research, take notes, all of that. And as these things go, weird things start happening. They can find explanations for some, but not for others. Yeah, so I definitely recommend this. I think, what did I give it? 3 stars, 4 stars? something like that. I think I rated both of these about the same. We Have Always Lived in the Castle is a shorter story, and again, very sinister. Love that gothic feel to it. It's not as supernatural, or there aren't as many supernatural reasons for things happening in this. It's a psychological book, and yeah, I really like this too. It's about a family, and there is a mysterious incident that's happened in the past, and all of the town hate them. So it's kind of to do with this mob mentality, as well as paranoia, and it's got this very unsettling feel about it. So I really appreciated the atmosphere in both of these books, and I know that that's something Shirley Jackson is known for. So I think I will read more Shirley Jackson in the future. Then we've got Diary of a Bookseller by Sean Blythell. And oh, I love this so much. It was great. So I gave this 5 stars just off the bat. I worked as a bookseller for several years, both in New Zealand and in the UK, and I can really appreciate the stuff that he says, the kind of strange things that the customers say to you, and the things people ask for. This is it's set out as a diary. It's a true diary that he wrote over the period of a year. He lives in Wigtown, and that's where his bookshop is. Wigtown is a book town in Scotland, so it's known for having many bookshops, more bookshops than any other type of shop or business. So that's very cool. And yeah, I mean, he goes on little rants about the evils of Amazon, which is wonderful, and he talks about things like the moral dilemma about having a book like Mein Kampf on the shelf. You never know if it's going to end up in the hands of some fundamentalist, or if it's going to be somebody doing a research on the Second World War. So yeah, things like that were just very relatable, and conversations that I've had with other booksellers as well. And so I think if you've worked in the book trade, this is an absolute must read. If you love books and bookshops, then I think you're really going to love this as well. It's so funny. Honestly, I don't know if it's just because funny things happen, but he does have this really clever way of explaining and showing us how these funny situations come to be. Certainly some eccentric characters in there too, which is wonderful. Then we have Disobedience by Naomi Alderman. This is by the same author who wrote The Power, which won the Bailey's Prize last year. It's not called the Bailey's Prize anymore, is it? The Women's Prize for Fiction. You know the one I mean. Yeah, so this is about, it's a story of 2 women, and both are from this Orthodox Jewish family in London, and one has moved to New York. So it's from both of their perspectives. Although interestingly, from the woman who's moved to New York, it's in first person perspective, and when it's from the point of view of the woman who's still in London, it's from a third person perspective. So that's interesting, but it's also really helpful to know whose part you're reading. So we know that something happened in the past, and that's why one of them left. They had a romantic relationship as well, which is their past is explored through the book. So this has recently been made into a film as well, and having seen the film trailer, I was sort of expecting to think one way about it, and actually I ended up thinking a different way. Mostly to do with the woman who stayed in London's husband. I think when you have a story like this where, you know, 2 people have been broken apart because of circumstance, and then they come back together and one of them's with somebody else. You expect that person to be sort of framed as a villain, and I found that that wasn't really the case here. He was such a fascinating character, and I really appreciated the way that he was framed. The way that it resolved as well, that the ending of this book was very satisfying in a way that I didn't expect. So yeah, it was surprising and enjoyable. There are a few things that I didn't like so much about it. I think I gave it 3 stars, maybe 4 stars. But yeah, I would recommend this. It's an interesting glimpse into an Orthodox Jewish community as well. Then finally, I've read, and I'm actually currently rereading, The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and I am reading this because of a project that I'm doing. That's all I can say about it. But yeah, I really enjoyed this as well. It's not the most complex book in terms of the prose or even the depth of the characters, but what I really liked about this book was how really well structured it was. I know that sounds like an odd thing to admire in a book, but I think you could see very clearly what she was doing, and having done a bit of research into sort of the craft of story recently, I found that really fascinating. And there's a moment at the beginning, towards the beginning at least, where somebody asks the main character Jude, "What do you want?" Which is kind of a classic thing to do at the beginning of a story. You need to know the character's motivations in order to understand where the story's going. And she says, "Well, I want to be a knight." And he goes, "Yeah, but what do you really want?" And he keeps asking until we get to what she actually really wants. And that I found really interesting, and it's something that I think you have to do as an author. You have to understand the core desire of a character beyond just what they seem to want. Yeah, so what happens when their dreams are fulfilled? What do they want then? That's kind of the thinking and the question that is posed in this story. So that was really neat. There's also another moment where one of the characters says something about somebody kisses her on the hand, and she said it was like something out of a storybook. And her sister says to her, "Yes, but storybooks rarely, great things rarely happen in stories, and that if something good has just happened, it means something bad is about to happen." And I mean, what a perfect way to foreshadow, but also almost break that fourth wall and say, hey, this is a book, something bad's going to happen next. I really liked that. So this story is about 3 sisters, 2 of whom are mortal, and one, it turns out, is a fairy. And at the beginning of the story, this man turns up at their house. They're living in the mortal world, kills their parents and whisks them away to fairyland. And so we have these 2 mortal girls. They're twins, and they are growing up in this world which is kind of inherently poisonous to them. They can't eat the fruits from there or the wine, and there's a lot of threat because of that. And that sort of carries the tension through the book. So this is a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to reading the next one. There was one potentially problematic element, but it sort of depends how she takes it next. So I'm going to give that the benefit of the doubt. There's an absolutely despicable character in this, who, yeah, I really, really hope doesn't become a love interest. Let's leave it at that. But yeah, really enjoyed this. Probably gave it 4 stars. Yeah. So those are the books that I've read in the past few weeks. Let me know down in the comments what you're reading at the moment. And is there anything that you're wanting to get to that's on your TBR before the end of the year? I know this is the time of year when everyone goes, oh, my Goodreads challenge was set at 50 and I've only read 43 books. Or I've set my challenge way too high. So yeah, let me know what you want to get read by the end of the year. I've got a few on my list. but including Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. But apart from that, I think I'm probably just going to take it easy and see where I go. All right, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!